Hey, what's happening, guys? Dan Darrow here from the Alpha team. We are entering the busiest stretch of earnings so far this quarter. We have a pretty packed lineup of big names coming at us just about every single day. Mondays, as is typically the case, are a bit slower. There was a couple names before the open, and actually there's a couple names after the close, but really nothing that catches my eye today. One of the names that's reports after the close is Logitech, which got hit really hard last week, actually, after warning. Not that I would have been in it necessarily had they not warned, but they literally just guided last week. So, definitely removes some of the potential for an earnings play this evening. All right. Before the open tomorrow is when things start to get going. Very big industrial morning. 3M pricing about 5 points. These industrials are pretty different setups, so you'll see when I go through the charts. But 3M's been weaker, down for the year now, and one of the big things has been this litigation overhang, and I feel like because of that, it might struggle to have a bit more upside. But well, I guess what is a little bit more interesting is that the option pricing isn't too wild, so it could leave a little bit of room from a pricing perspective. GE has just been absolutely on fire since the start of this year, so totally different chart. Options are pricing about 4 points. So since the GE Healthcare spin out, it's just been pretty much straight up minus just like a two day pause last week. It seems like a setup where it should move a few points, but options are pricing in four, so a little bit of a tougher call. I feel like this could be more of like a day trade focus for me because it's been moving, volatility's been expanding. The chart seems to have room either way, so probably gonna be like a day after like focus. Also, you have a couple of defense stocks, so Lockheed, which is pricing in 15, and Raytheon, which is pricing in 3. I don't think I'm gonna have options on either of these, but there have been some weakness in these defense stocks as money rotates into some beaten down tech. So they need some good news because some of these charts are starting to look a bit more susceptible as they start to roll over and give back some of the big gains from October. So if earnings don't go well, it could kind of like continue to fuel this narrative where money's leaving defensive and going into more longer duration like risk on stuff. Johnson Johnson, so about 4.25 is what's priced in. So a big defensive stock. They're not in the defense space, but pharma stocks have been kind of like one of those defensive areas where people were kind of bidding up into year end. Money's coming out since the start of this year, so you can see that the stock has been heavy now for about 2 weeks. Um, it's lost a bunch of big support levels, and earnings typically aren't huge events for the stock, but it might be something I watch after the numbers come out because of how weak it's been and where it's sitting now in the chart. But as far as taking options into earnings, I'll probably wait for the numbers to come out, then maybe keep an eye on it. All right, after the close on Tuesday, it's the big kahuna of the week. Microsoft, pricing in 1175. It's had a couple of recent downgrades, which has kept the lid on it a bit. It has bounced back pretty nicely. It's going to have a ton of attention on it, and good or bad, I will say the one consistent thing with Microsoft is that it has moved well and it's moved large when it's reported over the past year. So to me, the straddle looks priced a little bit low at 1175. So it seems like it could be setting up well for a volatility strategy. ISRG, so they're pricing in 14 points, but they already guided the quarter and the full year at the JP Morgan conference, so it's probably going to be a void for me. That's usually my rule of thumb. If a company pre-releases numbers or guides early, I typically avoid it for the actual report. Texas Instruments, so it's the first of a bunch of chip names, semis reporting next week. This is pricing in $8. Now, if you've listened to these videos over the last few quarters, you know that my rule of thumb since the summer quarter, so July and August, has been to avoid semi reports on earnings because more often than not, I just was not seeing the stocks exceed their price and move. So as we get into this earnings season, I'm going to stick with that mentality. So avoiding a lot of semis until the action proves otherwise. So if I start to see these stocks consistently moving what's moving more than what's priced in, then I'll maybe start to focus and trade them a bit more. But going into the quarter, I'm sticking with the plan from the last 2 quarters, which is avoid semi reports, avoid playing options on semi reports. Okay, so along those lines of thinking, Monday on Wednesday before the open, ASML, it's priced in at $32. Again, I'm going to be avoiding. Thing with ASML though, it's a big name, market cap wise. It's a big one, so it could have an impact on both like the overall sector, because it's in one of the top weights in the semi ETFs, and also the semi suppliers, because you have a few more semi supplier reports coming out later in the week, and this is the first to go, so it could have a pretty big impact there. Boeing, so about 975 is what's priced in. It's kind of an interesting one. I mean, the stock has been so strong for a few months now, and the top and the bottom line have not been pretty on recent quarters, but their cash flow has improved a bit. For me, it seems like the bar is higher this time around because of the big run. Option pricing, it's not cheap, but also, where the stock is sitting, it seems like it does have room either way. So, I'm kind of on the fence with it. Maybe if I did something to be like more of like a spec play, lower debit contracts, further out of the money, just in case it sees a larger swing this quarter. But it hasn't had a really big move on earnings in a while. After the close on Wednesday, another big one. So Tesla is pricing in $13. Technically the stock looks better than it has in a while because it's above the 8 EMA and the 20. But recent deliveries weren't great. Stock has been really lousy, minus the last week or so bounce. I feel like the deliveries could remove some of the volatility, and it just seems like a little bit tougher of a setup for options with the stock pricing in about like a 10% move. So I think it's going to be more of like a day after focus for me. IBM, it's kind of an interesting one. About 625 is what's expected. It's been hanging above the top of this multi-year downtrend. I can't scroll out that far, but it's been hanging above the top of the multi-year downtrend. The big issue with IBM is that it's really struggled to put together like back-to-back good reports, and they are coming off like a decent report. So if they can break that trend and really put together another good quarter, I feel like there could be some more potential to the upside, especially if it has that big breakout. But betting on IBM to have multiple good quarters in a row has been not the best proposition over the last few years. So this would be more of like a speculative play in my opinion. ServiceNow, so big software report. It's priced in about $33. Microsoft's numbers are probably going to impact this the day before, so we'll have to see where it's trading on Wednesday afternoon. But last quarter was solid. It had a nice little pop, and the stock is trying to work through the top of this multi-year downtrend now too. So, it's both interesting because it's like a big software name, and also technically it's interesting as well. But we'll have to see where it is after Microsoft, because it could have like a decent sized swing off that Microsoft report. But this could also impact a lot of other enterprise names, so like Salesforce, Adobe, Team, Workday, etc. So a lot of money could be moving around in this NOW number. More semis, LRCX, which is priced in 26.5, STX, which is priced in 475. So you guys know my lean on semis, so I'm going to be avoiding them. LVS, so about 315 is what's priced in. Casino's been acting great, along with Chinese names, kind of like a play on the reopening of that economy in Macau. Longer term chart at LVS looks interesting, but the stock is already up a lot year to date, and to me it's a tougher setup. So I probably will leave it alone. But you could look at maybe Win as a sympathy play because they don't report until February. Before the open on Thursday, Blackstone. So about 4.5 is what's priced in. Actually, was really beginning to deteriorate into the end of December, but then that University of California investment helped start to recover beginning of this year. I don't think it's going to be an earnings play for me, but I am kind of curious to see how it acts post earnings, as there's been a lot of bearish calls piling up on this one. And if you scroll out, you can kind of see that it's doing like the pattern like a lot of these other names, which is just giving back all the gains from 2021. All right, so MasterCard, about 14.5 points is what they're pricing in. So this report's before Visa, so it should move both. I mean, they're Visa and Mastercard are both really near like their best level in months, well off the October low. J.P. Morgan had okay credit card metrics, but that didn't impact Mastercard much. Um, I do think this should move, but with options at 15, it looks like it's a little bit tougher setup. Um, Thursday's a ways off, so I'll be watching to see if the pricing comes down maybe later in the week, and if not, maybe maybe something I look at with like cheaper spreads on both sides, but I'm kind of on the fence with it. After the close on Thursday, Intel, so 225 is what's priced in. Broke a long streak of getting hit hard on earnings last quarter, but the stock really hasn't done much since then anyway. Chart it looks okay, kind of tight. It's more interesting than some other semis because it hasn't really started to like turn the corner and run. Um, but I think my plan right now is to avoid it still. It has historically moved AMD in the kind of like an inverse play, and it sometimes can impact the semi-equipment names too. But you do have a few really like high-profile semi-equipment names reporting during the week anyway, so I don't think the options are really going to be that cheap on those names. Because just for instance, KLAC, it's a name that can historically move with Intel when they talk capex guidance, but they're actually reporting Thursday after the close as well. So the options just are priced pretty high because of that. And also Thursday after the close is Visa. So I mean, Mastercard's price, Visa's priced in at 9. Mastercard reports before the open, so it's definitely going to have an impact. It's definitely going to impact on Mastercard, on Visa, excuse me. So we're gonna have to see where these are both are trading because but by the time Visa reports, it could be up a bunch from here or down a bunch. So I don't know if there's gonna be a trade there. And then Friday before the open, a couple names. So Chevron priced in about 6. What's interesting about this is that for a while Exxon and Chevron are reporting on the same day, but they don't this coming week. It's just Chevron. These two are pretty correlated, but have maybe been a little bit less so recently. Chevron does look tight. Seems like setting up for higher prices. When you look at Exxon, it's probing the high. Chevron's a little bit off the high, right? So it seems like it's set up for higher prices. It doesn't typically have huge swing on earnings, but it does seem to be set up more for like maybe like a spec bull play. Or again, I mean, Exxon and Chevron haven't been exactly highly correlated recently, but I mean they do tend to move off of one another, so could be a little bit of a sympathy play there too. And then lastly is HCA, so about 20 to 21 points is what's priced in, but those are monthly options. It's a big hospital name that's seen some really high volatility around recent earnings. THC, which is another hospital stock, gave some numbers last week, but didn't have much of an impact on HCA. I do wish there were shorter term contracts on this because paying for February monthlies removes some of the potential, in my opinion. That being said, though, it has exceeded a 10% move on earnings the last 3 quarters in the February straddle. So even paying for the entire month of February, it's only priced in about 8.5%. So it may even leave some room, even having to like go through like the February contracts. But and again, if there were weekly contracts, to me it would have been a little bit more interesting, but still a name that has over the last 3 quarters, so here, and then here, it's had some really big moves on earnings, so one to keep an eye on. All right, so as you can see, definitely big names pretty much every day. Hoping for a lot of good action, some big moves, and hopefully a good trading week. All right. So if you like this video, come check out the Alpha Team. It's where I'm hanging out during the days, and we can break down a lot of these setups on the day of or the day after. Talk through some live up-to-date option pricing, and if the setups change, we can go over those as well. So be sure to stop on by. All right. Have a great night, and I will talk to you guys this week.